This video is sponsored by MagicMind. Apple finally has the tools to take down Google if they want to.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk all things tech, AI, robots, and Apple throughout the week. And today we're talking about a bunch of different Apple and Google technologies kind of fighting each other. And the first one is a really interesting one that's coming out in the iOS Beta 5. So I actually downloaded this, and so I'll give it a quick demo here. But this is also coming to iPad OS Beta 5 and macOS Sequoia Beta 5. And it's called Distraction Control. And essentially, it's accessible in the same page menu that is in Safari for Reader and Viewer, but it allows you to take specific elements out of a website and just hide them. In practice, this can function as an ad blocker, being automatically built into Safari, which is pretty crazy.
This thing is nuts, guys. Like my first time using it was like 3 minutes before we started rolling camera, because Ryan showed it to me on the demo. This thing's wild. Check them out.
So I got a shawarma recipe here, and these websites are notorious for being the worst for ads and distraction and everything. So you open the reader here, you click hide distracting items, and then hide, and look at that beautiful animation. Oh, this ad is annoying. Let me hide that. Jump to recipe button. I probably want, oops, I accidentally hit it. Okay, well, it didn't quite work. Hide. And then click done, and then I can scroll down. I can be like, oh, this little video ad right here. Let me hide distracting items. Get rid of that guy. Get rid of that guy. Hide. And now it's no longer distracting me. It's a little bit of a process right now, but the cool thing about this is that in practice, for most elements of a page, it goes through a refresh. It doesn't work that way with ads, though. So this is kind of like a temporary ad blocker for you, but then you're going to have to block the ads every single time you open the page.
Right. It probably a better name for this is distraction blocker, I guess, really is what it's doing. I mean, that's literally
distraction
what it's
control
called.
is
Yeah,
the name.
sure, yeah. But when you first showed me this, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I don't know how often I would actually use it. But now I'm starting to think, especially on long-form articles. I'm a big reader guy. Do you go in reader mode a lot?
I actually don't, but I'm going to start.
Dude, I go all the time.
Yeah.
Just off the bat, Reader will take out a lot of stuff and make the page a lot cleaner and work nicer. But there's also times where I'm like, oh, what is going on with all this stuff? So I can see that, especially if you're here in America and you're about to get inundated with political ads and all kind of stuff, and you're like, man, I don't want to see any of this. It's before bed. I just want to relaxing read my shawarma recipe. You just start zapping it all away.
Yeah,
and it's cool. I mean, we're talking about ads, but it'll get rid of actual parts of the article, which you know what? I immediately thought of a use case for that. There's been many times when I've wanted to screenshot something for a presentation or to show someone else something, and this will make a cleaner version of it without you having to kind of, I don't know, copy and paste the text out of it or something like that. You can literally just take screenshots of a nicer looking version of a web page to share it and show to people. So,
and it's way you don't have to do any post processing.
Yeah, I'm not even sitting there in Photoshop cropping stuff out or whatever. So this is kind of cool, man. I kind of like it.
Right now, I am trying something which is taking out the entire, full narrative story that occurs before a recipe. I'm going to see if I can get rid of absolutely every element of this page, and then if I refresh it, what happens from there? Hide. All right, well, fast forward to when I finish this.
Hey man, we're always talking about all these crazy breakthroughs and improvements that are just improving the world around us, improving computers, improving machines, but how about improving the machine that is our mind? I think we have something to talk about that you guys are going to love.
That is correct. We're talking about MagicMind, which is a mental performance shot. And it's fairly new. It's very exciting. I've been using it for quite some time at this point because originally the brand reached out to me, sent me some samples, and I tried it and then definitely enjoyed it. There's all sorts of ingredients that go into MagicMind, including ceremonial grade matcha, the best nootropics on the market, nano encapsulation technology, and organically grown mushrooms, just to name a few. And all of it comes together to make this mental performance shot. So they talk about pairing this with coffee because it will extend that release of your caffeine, and then it also just adds to it with all sorts of different things. So I first tried it 7 days in a row, doing one shot per day, and I definitely noticed the difference.
Yeah, on the bottle, it literally says reclaim your brain. That's such a great way to think about it. In our crazy schedules we're running these days, I always feel like my mental energy runs out way before my physical energy. You know, it's like, oh, like if I could just focus, I could get stuff done. And that's why I love this stuff.
So if you want to check out Magic Mind for yourself, click the link in the description below or go to magicmind.com/allfuture20. You'll get 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days or 20% off a one-time purchase.
And it's interesting how it's having to do this, right? Like, this is like kind of cool. And you seemingly can make a web page entirely blank if you want it. And it's just taking out every single section of it.
Okay, I'm almost to the part, but like this even has a built-in ad in the middle. Yeah, there we go. Like that's already a better look if I was screenshotting this page. Or can I take out this print recipe button? Yeah, these specific buttons. This is really nice, actually, just for things like this. And then now I'm going to try refreshing the page and see what happens. I'm assuming the ads will come back, but will the paragraphs come back? Oh, okay. This is definitely a beta.
we seemingly broke the web page.
Yeah, I think it's like giving me the full web page length, but the elements are gone. So
yeah,
this has some work to do, but I like the idea of it. It has stayed through the refresh of the page that these elements are gone, but they just need to iron this out.
Yeah, pretty neat feature. It brings up a whole thing with ad blocks and all that. I don't know if there's been kind of an arms race between at Google and property YouTube and ad blocks recently. You know, like a lot of every time YouTube has essentially been circumventing people who have ad blocks and making it so where they can't even play a video anymore if they have an ad block on. You know, so and they keep going back and forth with it. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if man, it's a weird thing that we got to strike the balance with things like ad blocks, right? Because you need ads to pay for this stuff, right? I mean, we
have ads on this video.
We literally have an ad on this video, right? Like this is the economic system that we are in. But man, some websites just look terrible, right? It's just not good. It's not smart implementations of it. It's not natural. It is distracting. It is more of a distraction than an ad. It makes me much less likely to buy whatever thing they're advertising there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is kind of a cool feature, and I'm excited to see how it kind of rolls out and comes together.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see in practice if a lot of people end up using this like an ad blocker. It seems annoying that you would do it every time, but I think we're also kind of conditioned at this point from certain apps and like games and stuff that you like open it and then you close the ad. So it's instead you're like actually getting rid of the ad before you're going to read the page. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess it would help if like things where the ad dynamically reloads into that spot, it would get rid of that. Like it wouldn't happen at all then, you know? So like, and this usually happens just with maybe like pop-up elements and things like that. So I don't know how it operates there. So yeah, cool.
And one could draw a connection here to Google ads because a lot of ads on the website, on the Google,
yeah,
a lot of ads on the internet are Google. And recently, it's kind of looking like they're going to have to stop paying Apple for their search exclusivity. So do you know the details on this, like from the Department of Justice?
I do know the details on this.
Yeah.
Not directly from the Department of Justice, but from news articles of people who have talked to the Department of Justice. So, so Google's been under antitrust lawsuits and investigations for years at this point. And finally, a judge is like, they're using illegal monopoly practices, I guess is a better word for it. Because to be clear, like we use it, a lot of times we say monopolies are illegal. That's not true. A monopoly can be perfectly legal, right? If me and you start selling, I don't know, used cans from our podcast set, right? Like we're the only people in the world doing that. We have a monopoly on that. That is not illegal because we have not made an illegal setup where no one else can come in and compete, right? Which is where people actually get in trouble. It's anti-competitiveness that gets people in trouble. And in this case, what the judge has really zeroed in on is how Google pays Apple and every other phone manufacturer and operating system person. So it's not just Apple. Pays them to have Google be the default search engine on their mobile web browsers. And a judge is like, well, this is definitely in direct violation of competitive practices. Supposedly they're paying Apple up to $20 billion a year for this. Not a small amount of money. That money going away isn't going to be like Apple's going to go out of business or anything because Apple makes an even more amount than that. But the judge is essentially saying, that's wrong. You guys, we got to stop doing this. Now, the way that monopoly, these kind of antitrust trials work, there's a kind of like well, like most trials work, there's a judgment call on whether something is guilty or not guilty, right and wrong, whatever, however you want to word it. And then there's a separate kind of sentencing or punishment aspect of it that's going to happen. So we don't know what's going to happen here. It's very possible that this could play out, and when it actually comes down to is the U.S. government goes, Google, that was bad. You've got to pay us $5 million for it.
Yeah, it's always some fine that it does not at all relate.
Yes, a fine that would financially ruin the vast majority of people in the world, but to these companies, no one cares. They're like, whatever. It was just cheap for us to do this.
Oops.
Whoops. So we'll see. What it could also come down to is the judge goes, oh no, like this is crazy. I'm outlawing this. It could go as far as it comes down as Alphabet, Google's parent company, you need to spin off Google into its own business or something, right? Like it could get even crazier because we're talking about the paid search thing. The other part of this is how Google owns both sides of a thing on the Android side, because they not only own the search engine, they own the platform.
Yeah.
And that was a part of this judgment as well, which is probably more existential and dangerous to Google than like the paying for search on other people's platform is. This is exactly the thing that got Microsoft really in the late 90s or early 2000s with all their anti-competitive problems with the U.S. government, was that essentially with Microsoft it was, oh, you're making Microsoft Word for Windows, you're applying both sides of it. And then famously they made the deal with Apple to continue to develop Microsoft also Office products for the Mac specifically so the government wouldn't break them up. So I could see Google trying to get some kind of deal like that going, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, like we're not anti-competitive. Look, we like, yeah, they come up with some kind of way around it.
Yeah.
I'm curious to what Apple's going to do. Like, what do you think? What do you think Apple's kind of vibe on it says?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably not going to be up to them, but I do see them probably seeing a certain silver lining of like getting out of that, and they're looking into the future of like how different this is all going to be. Search is totally changing. AI is becoming a big part of it. Apple's competing with Google on AI, so maybe they do want to stop this, even though it is a dent for them. Reportedly in 2022, they made about $78.13 billion from services, and $20 billion reportedly is from Google paying them this payment. And they made about $85 billion last year. So if that $20 billion is the same, it's less of a dent. But obviously Apple could make that up, but it does make an impact. But I don't know. I could see them kind of being like, all right, cool. Now we're not tied. We can decide to do something different and do an Apple thing with it. What do you think?
You know what? Maybe a core memory just unlocked for me. Do you remember Netscape Navigator, the web browser?
Honestly, no.
So it was the biggest web browser in the world before Internet Explorer really took off. And when you first set up Netscape, it had just a pop-up, and you would pick your search engine. I want to say at the time it was Alta Vista. Maybe Yahoo was around that early too, like this is probably like 96, 97 or something like that. But I see like that's how Apple might kind of, or the judge might force every platform maker to do this. But I can see that's being the implementation of it. It is essentially like on the initial iPhone setup, it goes, what do you want your default search engine to be? Yeah, blah blah blah, and you pick it right there. And I could see Apple making it so where you can still get money from that some kind of way. Still they're going to get money from Google still through this.
Based on how many users or
something like that, maybe, or I don't know, preferential treatment on which would probably violate the spirit of what they're trying to do. But I mean, these are lawyers, man. They're going to try to figure it all out.
Yeah. Because you can already change default search engine.
Yeah, you can already do this. Like if you wanted to, it's just not set up.
Yeah, I think a lot of users don't even realize Google's just kind of the default, and it's like, what, Bing? I don't want to use Bing. What, So yeah, you can already do this, but yeah, maybe they'll just make it a little more obvious, kind of like where they prompt you, ask app not to track, that kind of stuff. We're seeing more and more. Yeah, the first time you open Safari, pick your search engine and. Instead of Google being like the big one, and then it's like, oh, you could use this one and this one. They'll all be
equal size. Yeah.
Speaking of Google this week, we've seen a lot of backlash recently. I feel like just from ads across multiple stretches, and it's all relating to AI stuff. Like there was that backlash for Apple's ad with the new iPad where it was like squashing all creativity into
creativity.
Yeah. And it's like the concept was like, you can fit all of this into an iPad, but they're also promoting AI that kind of replaces humans. And so it's like, we're destroying all of art
We're
and putting
destroying
it
art.
Yeah. So they rightfully got some backlash there. And it is funny that we keep seeing this where these ad companies don't really seem to get it, whoever's making these. And so Google just put out an ad for the Olympics for Gemini, and it starts out cool. It's like this young girl who wants to be a part of the Olympics in the future, and she's inspired by her hero that's running right now, and she's getting tips on like how to train, and it's generating using Gemini or using the automatic AI generated answers in Google. But then her dad wants to help her write a fan letter, and so her dad prompts Gemini to draft and completely compose the fan letter that it's going to be from her daughter to this athlete, which just completely eliminates the entire idea of a fan letter.
How did this get past kind of like the blue sky initial planning phases, right? They're like, oh, we got to do this Gemini ad. What are we thinking, guys?
Mm-hmm.
I got it. Let's take something that's supposed to be sincere and from the heart and from a child and have an AI make it instead. Like,
yeah.
What? Like how? There's so many better ideas, and they like hedge it a little because the narrator who is the dad figure in this, I'm sure they're all actors or whatever, but he says like, hey, I'm not so good with words, so I use Gemini to help me with this. There are so many kind of versions of that could be better.
Yeah.
Because I'm not anti-AI writing something for someone, right? Like, I mean, there's plenty of cases where that could be a great thing, right? There's so many, like, I don't see how these people aren't getting this, right? Like, like they're like, hey, like there are people out there who, are incredibly, intelligent and thoughtful and have all these ideas, and they can't form words that great, especially in written words, right? Maybe they have dyslexia or something like that, some other kind of learning disability. There's all kinds of things like that, right? And so you can have someone go, hey, like, there's so many things in my heart and my mind, and I want to write this letter and do this, but don't make it a fan letter. Like, that's where they're screwing up, right? Like have it be like, there's a million things, right? A guy wants to, I don't know, put a new stop sign in his neighborhood so it's safer or something. And he's like, but the city council ignores me because I can't write no good or whatever, and then they just come and he has the AI do it. Like, there's so many, you could show this exact function of AI in a way that is not so dehumanizing. And that's what this really is. And this is what, guys, I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle over here, man. Because like, as someone who works in the arts, has a lot of art friends, you're a musician, right? Same kind of world. Like, I'm trying to tell people, hey, AI is not terrible. It's not this bad thing. It's not this thing that this blanket go, I don't want anything to do with it, right? But repeatedly, I'm being knocked out at my knees by these companies. Like, I'm like, oh man, another example of this thing taking away something innately human, which is what people hate.
Yeah.
Don't advertise that part. Show how we can, like, hey, spell check my document for me, or reorganize the paragraphs, make this thing that I wrote short. There's so many like practical things it can do that are incredibly helpful. All the things in the top of this ad, which are like, oh, it's helping me train, I'm doing great, right? You could have the same ad and then don't have the AI letter at the end, right? Have it be her writing the fan letter and just being like, hey, I've been training real hard, I'm coming to get you. Great. That's a great ad all of a sudden. What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
Yeah, and then at that point, it's twice removed. Like, you already have her dad is writing her letter. Understandable situation, happens all the time.
That's weird too. If I'm I'm an athlete and I get a fan letter.
Well, like, yeah, it should be like helping, not just.
Exactly.
It's so detached. It's like you don't see them together. You don't even see the dad in the ad, I don't think.
No, he's just an omnipotent narrator.
So yeah, you're right. And so it's twice removed. It's the dad writing a letter, and he's not even writing it. The person who knows the daughter, he's using AI.
Yeah.
So what is that going to mean once it gets to the athlete?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And that's the problem. People are going to start kind of picking up on this. I have this problem right now. I'm just weird and like a stickler for grammar and things like that. And sometimes people will tell me like, oh, this is really well written. Did an AI write it? I'm like, no, man. Like, I know how to write. Like, I just use complete sentences and good sentence structure and very sentence length. Everything we were taught in like with 10th grade English or whatever, So now, like athletes, famous people, always they're going to be they already are probably inundated with stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like do you know this like I don't think this actually works. I think it's always just fake viral stuff. But when someone's getting married and they send invites to a bunch of rich people in the hopes that they get free gifts or whatever,
and like sometimes they get them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This feels like that. Like now you're just scamming, right? Because you can go to AI, write 14 other fan letters or 10,000 other fan letters to other people.
As long as I hit an athlete that responds, then my daughter will be inspired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're the dad just faking the whole thing.
Just faking the whole thing at that point, right? It just takes all the authenticity out of a thing. So, come on, Google. Come on. How did this, like, I just question the processes here. Like it seems like that would have gotten tripped up immediately, like in the planning process. Like no one is looking at this. No one's thinking, jeez, man.
So our producer, Andrew, pitched his own ad that Google should have done. I'm going to read through his treatment right now. So you have a swimmer that's killing it in the pool, swimming laps. Voiceover is talking about the dedication it takes to make gold. She's wearing Pixel Buds and gets a text on her Pixel. It's her opponent from another country.
I like the joint product placement. Let's put some pixels in there.
Of course. She's excited to see her, but she also says she's going to take gold. She asked Gemini to put together a message saying there's no way she's going to lose and translate it into her language. So, yeah, the translation feature, that's great. That's a great AI use case. Then she jumps back into the pool. The tagline, don't miss the moments to go for gold. Google credits.
I like the tag. I'm not sure if I like the setup, right? But yeah, cool. Yeah, but that would be better.
Yeah.
That would be better. Just show like AI can do so many cool practical stuff. Why do we keep pushing the stuff that people hate about it? Like that's literally what we're doing.
Yeah. And you see it all over the place. I'm a musician, so I see it that way totally. I see there's cool use cases for how AI could help you make a certain sound or a specific element of a song, but then you have all these people pushing like, oh, this made an entirely AI-generated song that is devoid of feeling and replaces all of musicians. And so then musicians are like, no, I'm not touching this at all. And
yeah, exactly. There's so many great tools in it. Do better, Google. Come on, man.
Yeah. Anyways, back to Apple and Google fighting it out. There's arguments this week that Apple is behind in AI, which we've kind of known.
Yeah, well, I've never heard that before. Yeah. It's shockingly new information to me.
But even now that they're trying to catch up, the spending is going up, but it's not even really close to what we're seeing from Google and Microsoft and other companies truly diving all the way in on AI.
Yeah, here's the thing. Who cares? Like this isn't like the thing is like if all these companies, I think it's just the cultural difference between these places, right? You look at something like Google and Microsoft, they are so big and have so many R&D divisions doing so much weird stuff, you know, well, far beyond consumer stuff even, right? Like all these different spaces they're in, all this stuff. Apple is much more focused, right? Because ultimately, Apple is still a consumer products company, consumer electronics company. That is what Apple is. That's not something you could say about Google or Microsoft. So, of course, those companies are spending a lot more money because I'm sure there's guys at Microsoft looking at AI for, I don't know, government applications. There are guys at Google looking at AI for things like search applications and things like that, or maybe writing fan mail. I don't know. Whatever they're looking at over there, it's a much broader net they're casting. Apple is probably more hyper-focused on AI implementation at the user level in smartphones. Like that's probably literally the only thing they're looking at.
Yeah.
So they're going to spend less money. But when you look at, we're still talking billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And, you know, spending $2 billion, $3 billion on something laser focused that's going to go to market, that's going to sell units, you could argue is a better way to do it than spending $20 billion on a ton of just theory and vaporware, which just seems like what these other companies are doing.
Yeah, it could just be argued it's way more efficient than these other companies. I just had a thought, and I don't know if this is true at all, but I don't feel like I hear about mass layoffs at Apple. You hear about it at Meta and Google and Microsoft and Amazon and all these other companies that are definitely spending big. Do we hear about that at Apple, or am I wrong?
Look, I would say the biggest thing they had was when they closed that car division, right? But a lot of those guys got repurposed. Apple also doesn't hire as fast and as big as these other guys.
Yeah.
Man, Apple is frugal, man. Like anyone who's been to Apple, like to the actual Apple campus, I'll tell you a story, man. I've been to Samsung in Korea. Like I've been to multiple Google offices and buildings, both here in LA and in Northern California. And I've been to Apple back when it was on One Infinite Loop. So the old Apple headquarters. I haven't been to the Circle one, right? Okay. There's only one of those places I had to pay for my own lunch, and that was Apple. Huh. like every other place, the employee kind of cafeteria was like, oh yeah, just go take what you want, free unlimited food, whatever. You go to the like YouTube's headquarters in LA here, in
like
Playa Vista, an old Howard Hughes hangar. Like they have rooms that are like candy rooms, like snack rooms. They're just rooms full of like, there's just walls of drawers of candy you can just pull out and pull food out, whatever. Yeah. Apple, none of that, man. Apple looked like a corporate office place. Very nice place, right? Very well designed place. But it felt like people there were working, right? Like it felt like work there. Go to you go to the I was just thinking that airplane hangar that YouTube has. Man, they have huge areas of desk, and there's like 2 guys working.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I know a lot of it, they're doing hybrid work and all this kind of stuff. But I saw more people in their video game lounge playing video games than I saw at desk doing stuff, right? I don't know if this is better for productivity. I don't run $1 billion company. But what I would say is that if all of a sudden you're not hitting your projected goals, it's really easy for a boss to come in there and go like, lay all these people off, man. Like, what am I paying all these guys for? Right? You work in Apple and it goes like, oh, everyone's working here. Like, I don't think personnel overhead is our problem. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, that just came to mind because I was like, you hear about mass layoffs from companies all the time, but I don't think I've really heard of them from Apple. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, like link an article of where they...
No, and Apple definitely has like...
Yeah, they have layoffs, of course, but it's not
nearly...
like 20% or 30% like you see with these other
Meta,
companies.
like, man, it seems like Meta like just cuts people all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And so that's kind of showing their efficiency there to where... when they're doing something, like they're doing it. They're not just going, oh, we're spending $20 billion to see if we can make a product. It's like, we're spending 2 because we're making this is what our product is going to be. Yeah. So reading into that, it might not mean much, but we do know they are behind right now. They have some catching up to do on AI, and I'm excited to see what the future holds there. And then like what that means between their relationship with Google and search and what the future holds for all that stuff.
We'll see. Make better commercials.
And real quick, before we wrap up this video, don't forget to check out Magic Mind for focus, energy, and more. It's a mental performance shot, and you can check them out linked in the description below.